Yeah, 1998, I met up with a guy called Derek Gray, who's, I don't think he's released anything, not that I've heard of. I've kind of lost contact with him now, actually. But at that time, he taught me a lot about production. At that time, we had an Akai sampler and a thing called an MMT8, which is like a sort of MIDI sequencer, a couple of synths, and we produced. He kind of taught me the ropes about production. I mean, again, none of that stuff ever saw the light of day. I mean, the first stuff that actually saw the light of day is the Spectral Empire stuff. But before that as well, and after Derek Gray, I met up with, I was DJing a lot at Bar Vinyl, as I mentioned earlier. And I met up with a guy called Gary Burns, who was in Sabres of Paradise and The Aloof and a few bands like that. And he'd spent a few years out in Thailand, sort of lost years, and then he'd just arrived back in London. I met him in Bar Vinyl, and we started a little project. We did a couple of remixes for, oh god, I can't even remember the name of the band now. Again, they never came out actually, funnily enough, but they were. We did a couple of remixes, and he taught me a lot about, the importance of buying equipment, outboard equipment, and also the sort of modern side of production with computers and that kind of thing. So so basically since then I sort of blended those two together, and then I started at that time. I started buying a few synths. I started buying a few sort of historic pieces of equipment, and my friend George, who I'd been DJing with a lot, he started to come around, and we just started making tunes, and that eventually formed into Spectral Empire, that I released a couple of records around 2008, 2007, something like that. So yeah, I mean, that kind of takes me up to my production point where I met Johnny.
So in terms of production, I guess I started out, I think properly I started out maybe sort of 7 or 8 years ago, buying equipment. I'd sort of learned and played instruments before, and always liked playing musical instruments. But in terms of production, 8 or 9 years ago, bought a couple of synths, bought a computer, started working. Probably took me about, I guess like 3 or 4 years to really kind of learn the ropes of what I was doing. And the first stuff I put out was when I was still in Japan, and that was under the name Disco Session, which was also the party and the club night that I was doing with Shishimizu, Dr. Nishimura and Zeki. So we put out our first record probably 2006, I think, on the Japanese label Cruel. We produced that. Then I did another couple of things with Disco Session, also on Cruel. And then I moved back to the UK, started working additionally on another project with my good friend Taco, who's also DJing at Outlaws Yacht Club this week. So we started working on a project called Sombrero Galaxy, which was kind of based around a lot of musical influences that we had at that time together, and listening to a lot of music together, talking about music a lot. And that's a great project, and has worked really, really well, and something that I hope to do more of in the future. And we've done a couple of remixes together as well as Sombrero Galaxy. And then in addition to that, I've done a fair few remixes for different people on ESP Institute, which is the label that Sombrero Galaxy came out on. It was the first release for ESP Institute, which is the label of Andrew Hogg, otherwise known as Love Fingers. And it's been great to be involved in that label and have a home for all the productions that I'm doing. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the sort of vision that we all kind of share. Everyone on that label is doing something special, and I think where Andrew's taking the label, it's something that I'm proud to be a part of, and it's a definite family vibe.